Ryan and I grew up in the same house, but we lived in completely different worlds. He was the older brother, confident, loud, the kind of guy who filled every room he walked into. I was the younger one, quieter, always watching from the corner, always 2 steps behind. Our parents called us night and day. Teachers called us the Mitchell boys, always with a small smile, like they were waiting to see what would happen next. Neighbors knew us as Jake's little brother or Ryan's kid brother, depending on who you asked first. I never minded being second. Honestly, I preferred it. There was something comfortable about existing in Ryan's shadow. Nobody expected too much from you there. Nobody looked too closely. But then Marcus came into our lives. And everything I thought I understood about comfort, about shadow, about myself, all of it slowly, quietly, completely fell apart. Marcus Bell moved to our street this summer. I turned 15. Ryan was 17. And they clicked instantly, the way some people just do. Like 2 puzzle pieces that were manufactured for each other. Within a week, Marcus was at our house every single day. He'd walk through the front door without knocking, go straight to the kitchen, open our refrigerator like it was his own, and call out for Ryan in that easy, relaxed voice of his. I remember the first time I really looked at him. Not just a glance, not just a nod hello, but actually looked. He was standing in our backyard, laughing at something Ryan had said. His head tilted back, eyes closed, completely unguarded. He had this laugh that came from somewhere deep, like it started in his chest before it reached his face. He was tall, maybe an inch or 2 taller than Ryan, with dark brown skin and close-cut hair and these hands that always seemed to be moving, gesturing when he talked, drumming on surfaces when he was thinking, tapping his knee when he sat still for too long. I was 15. I didn't know what I was feeling. I just knew I wanted to keep watching him for the first year. I was just Ryan's little brother to Marcus. He was polite to me, the way older kids are polite to younger siblings. Pleasant, casual, a little distracted. He'd ruffle my hair when he passed me in the hallway. He'd say, "Hey, buddy," when he saw me in the kitchen. He'd sometimes ask, "How's school?" Without fully listening to the answer, I told myself it didn't bother me. I told myself a lot of things that year. I told myself that the reason I paid attention every time Marcus walked into a room was because he was interesting. I told myself the reason I remembered every detail about him, the small scar on his chin, the way he always smelled like cedar and something clean, the fact that he took his coffee with exactly 1 sugar and no cream, was because I was observant. I told myself the reason my heart moved differently when he was nearby was because he had an energy about him, a presence that affected everyone. I told myself it wasn't specific to me. I was wrong about all of it. The first real conversation we ever had, just the 2 of us. Number Ryan in the room happened on a Tuesday evening in November. I was 16 by then. Ryan had gone out on a date, and Marcus had shown up at our house not knowing, because this was before everyone lived on their phones the way we do now. My mom answered the door, told him Ryan wasn't home. And Marcus said, "Oh," and looked so genuinely disappointed that my mom, being my mom, said, "Well, come in and wait a while. He'll probably be back soon." I was sitting at the kitchen table doing homework. Marcus came in and sat across from me. For a while, neither of us said anything. I kept pretending to read my textbook. He pulled out his phone. Then he looked up and said, "What are you working on?" "History essay," I said. "World War I. What's your angle?" I looked up. Most people, when they ask that question, were just making conversation. But he was actually looking at me, actually waiting. "I'm writing about the soldiers who wrote letters home," I said a little cautiously. "Not the generals or the politics. Just the regular guys. What they were afraid of, what they missed." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "That's a better angle than anything I wrote in high school." I didn't know what to do with that. I just looked back down at my paper. But then he said, "Read me some." "What?" "Read me some of the letters. If you have them there." I did have them. Printed out, highlighted, annotated. I looked at him for a second, trying to figure out if he was joking. He wasn't. So I read him a letter from a 19-year-old soldier named Alfred to his mother, written 3 days before he died, talking about the smell of bread and how much he missed ordinary Sundays. When I finished, Marcus didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "People don't change, do they? What we're afraid of losing? It's always the same stuff." Ryan came home 20 minutes later. Marcus immediately turned into the loud, laughing version of himself, the one I always saw. But for those 20 minutes, I had seen something else. Something quieter. I thought about that version of him for weeks. By the time I was 17, I had accepted something about myself that I had been carefully not accepting for a long time. It didn't happen dramatically. There was no single moment of revelation. It was more like I had been standing in a room that was slowly getting brighter. And one day I looked around and realized I could see everything clearly. And the only thing left to decide was whether I was brave enough to keep my eyes open. I was gay. I knew it, the way you know something that has always been true, not as a discovery, but as an acknowledgement. Like finally saying the name of a color you've been seeing your whole life. I didn't tell anyone, not yet. Our family wasn't hostile. My parents were decent people. Ryan was a decent person, but decent doesn't always mean prepared. And I was 17, still living under their roof. Still figuring out how to hold this. New, clear knowledge inside my chest without dropping it. The only thing that complicated the clarity was Marcus, because knowing what I was didn't make what I felt about him simpler. If anything, it made it more specific, more undeniable, and therefore more impossible. He was my brother's best friend. He was 2 years older than me. He was, as far as I knew, completely straight. I did the only thing I could do. I got very good at being normal around him. When Ryan left for college, I expected Marcus to disappear from our lives. That's how it usually works. Friendships built in the geography of childhood tend to dissolve when the geography changes. People move on. The common ground shifts, but Marcus didn't disappear. He visited Ryan at college. He still came by our house when he was in the neighborhood, still sat in our kitchen, still talked to my mom about his own mother's health and his job and his plans. He had started working at an architecture firm downtown, entry-level, mostly administrative. But he talked about eventually going back to school for his degree, and he started talking to me, differently than before. Not "hey, buddy," and hair ruffles. Actually talking. I was 17 going on 18. And somewhere in the previous year, I had apparently become a person Marcus Bell found worth talking to. I didn't know when it had happened. I didn't know what had changed. But I wasn't going to question it. We talked about books he read constantly. Everything. Fiction and nonfiction and long journalism and history. We talked about music. We talked about the city, about architecture, about why certain buildings made you feel something and others left you completely empty. We talked about his work, about college, about what I wanted to do with my life. He never once talked to me like I was too young to have a real opinion. That meant more than I knew how to say. I came out to my parents the January of my senior year of high school. It went okay, which is perhaps the most complicated possible outcome. Not badly. Not explosively. Not warmly and perfectly either. It's just okay. My mom cried a little and then hugged me very hard. My dad got quiet in a way that frightened me, and then 2 days later came into my room and said, "I love you." Nothing changes that, and then didn't bring it up again for months, which wasn't ideal but was, I told myself. Something Ryan I told over the phone because he was away at school and I couldn't wait. He was quiet for a moment and then said, "Okay, are you good?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Good, call me if you need anything." He wasn't effusive about it, but he meant it, and with Ryan, meaning it was what mattered. I did not tell Marcus. I told myself it wasn't relevant. I told myself it would be awkward. I told myself he'd probably figure it out eventually, and it didn't need to be announced. The truth was, I was terrified of what it would mean to tell Marcus, because telling him would make it real in a different way. It would put the truth and my feelings and his presence all in the same room together. and I didn't know what would happen in that room, and I wasn't ready to find out. The summer after I graduated high school, I got a part-time job at a bookstore downtown. Marcus's firm was 6 blocks away. He started stopping in on his lunch breaks. At first, sporadically, once every couple of weeks, then more regularly. Then it became a kind of quiet routine. He'd come in around 12:30, browse for a while, sometimes buy something, sometimes just sit in the reading corner with a coffee from the place next door and stay for 20 minutes before heading back. I told myself he came for the books, but he always ended up at whichever section of the store I happened to be working in. Fiction, when I was shelving fiction. Architecture and design, when I was reorganizing that corner. Biography, when I was pulling a customer's order from that shelf. One afternoon in July, he came in and found me in the back room during my break, sitting on a stack of boxes reading a novel I'd pulled from the new arrivals. He leaned in the doorway and said, "Good." I held up the cover so he could see. He smiled. "I read that last spring. Don't let yourself get too attached to the secondary characters." That's an ominous thing to say. I'm an honest man. He came and sat on the boxes beside me. Not close, just close enough that I was aware of the exact distance between us. We talked for 30 minutes, until my break was over. When I stood up to go back to the floor, he stood too and said, "Same time Thursday?" "It's a bookstore," I said. "You don't need an appointment." "I know," he said. And he smiled again and left. I stood in the back room for a moment after he walked out, hand pressed flat against my sternum, feeling my own heartbeat. Same time, Thursday. He came Thursday. And the Thursday after that, and the one after that. By August, it was simply a thing that happened, a part of the week's structure, unspoken but reliable. He never made a big deal of it. Neither did I. We just talked about everything. About nothing, about the books I was reading and the buildings he was studying, and the cities we both wanted to see, and the NDE. Things we were afraid of, and the things we hoped for, he told me. About his family, a younger sister he adored, a father who had left when he was 10, a mother who had worked 2 jobs for years, and who Marcus was now quietly helping to support. He told me about the loneliness of being the person everyone leaned on, of feeling like you had to be solid for other people and never quite knowing who you could be soft around. I told him things I hadn't told anyone. About the pressure of feeling like I had to be easy, uncomplicated, no trouble, the particular pressure of being the gay younger brother who needed his family to feel like it hadn't been too hard on them, that he was fine, always fine. About how exhausting fine could be. He listened in that particular way he had, completely present, not waiting for his turn to speak. "Actually in it with you. You're allowed to not be fine," he said one afternoon. "I know," I said. "Do you?" I looked at him. He was looking back at me with something in his eyes I couldn't quite name, something careful and attentive and warm. "I'm working on it," I said finally. He nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. "I'll hold you to that." Ryan came home for a long weekend in September, and the 3 of us spent a Saturday together for the first time in what felt like years. It was good, genuinely. Uncomplicatedly good. We went to a game, ate too much, laughed at old stories. Ryan was exactly himself, which was its own kind of relief. And I watched him and Marcus together, their easy shorthand, their shared history, the particular comfort of a friendship that had been tested by time and geography and come out intact. And I thought, this is what would be at stake. This friendship. This ease. This thing that my brother had built with someone over years. If Marcus knew how I felt, if anything were ever different, the casualty wouldn't just be my own potential embarrassment. It would be something Ryan had built too. I went home that night and lay in the dark and made a decision. I would keep what I felt to myself. I would enjoy the friendship for exactly what it was. I would be grateful for Thursday afternoons and honest conversations and the way Marcus Bell made me feel like the version of myself I most wanted to be. And I would leave it there, in that space, and never reach for more. It was a clean, sensible decision. I managed to keep it for exactly 3 weeks. It was a Thursday evening in October when it fell apart. or came together. Depending on how you look at it, I had been at the bookstore all day. Marcus had come by at lunch as usual. We'd talked, he'd bought a novel, he'd left, normal, routine, fine. But then at 7. As I was closing up with my coworker Amy, my phone lit up with a message from Marcus still at the office. Long day. Want to get dinner after you close up? I stared at the message for long enough that Amy leaned over and said, "You going to answer that or just develop feelings for it?" I typed back, "Yeah, give me an hour." We went to a small Thai place near the store. It was a weeknight, quiet. The kind of restaurant where the tables are close together and the lighting is warm, and it feels like you could say anything and it would stay in the room. He looked tired in a way. He didn't usually let people see. His tie was loosened. He had been running his hand through his hair. I could tell from the way it was slightly displaced from its usual clean shape. "Bad day?" I asked. "Long day," he said. "There's a difference." "What's the difference?" He thought about it. A bad day beats you up. A long day just stretches you thin. You end it feeling like taffy, pulled out longer than you're supposed to be. "Taffy," I said. "Don't laugh at my metaphors." "I'm not laughing. You're smiling. It's different," I said. He looked at me. Then he smiled too, slow and tired and real. "Yeah," he said. "I guess it is." We ate, we talked. The restaurant gradually emptied around us. The waiter refilled our water glasses twice. At some point, the overhead music changed from something ambient to something softer, slower. At some point, I couldn't have said exactly when the conversation shifted. Not in topic, but in texture. Something about the lateness of the evening, or the tiredness in his face, or the fact that we had talked so much over so many Thursdays that we had run out of surface and were now, inevitably, in deeper water. He said, "Can I ask you something?" "You always ask me things," I said. "This is different." I looked at him. "Are you happy?" He said the question landed differently than I expected. Not invasive, careful, like he had been holding it for a while and was now gently setting it down between us. "I think so," I said slowly. "Most of the time, why?" He was quiet for a moment. He turned his water glass slowly in his hands, watching it. "I don't know," he said. "Sometimes when I'm with you, I feel like there's something you're not saying. My heart was doing something very inconvenient." "I'm pretty honest with you," I said. "I know. That's why I notice when something's held back." I didn't say anything. He looked up from the glass. "You don't have to tell me," he said. I want you to know that you can. Whatever it is." The restaurant was nearly empty. The warm light was doing something unfair to his face. He was looking at me with those careful, attentive eyes, and I thought about the last 3 months of Thursdays, and the letter from Alfred to his mother about ordinary Sundays. And what he'd said that first night, people don't change. Do they? What we're afraid of losing? It's always the same stuff? And I thought about clean, sensible decisions and how long they lasted and what they cost you, I said. "There's something I haven't told you, okay? Not because I don't trust you. I do, more than almost anyone." "Okay," he said again, steady. This might change things. And I need you to know that I understand if it does. I'm not asking for anything. And I don't want things to be weird, especially because of Ryan. And I have a whole speech prepared in my head about how I'm fine with just, "Hey," he said. I stopped. "Just say it," he said quietly. I looked at him. "I have feelings for you," I said. "I have for a long time. And you deserve to know that, even if nothing happens and nothing changes. You were honest with me, and I wanted to be honest with you." Silence. He was looking at me. His expression was, I couldn't read it. It was the most terrifying few seconds of my life. Then he said, "How long?" "What? How long have you felt this way?" I swallowed. "Since you laughed in my backyard when I was 15 and I didn't know what the feeling was yet." Something moved across his face. Something that loosened, like a held breath released. He said, "I've been coming to that bookstore 4 times a week for 3 months. 3, I said. Thursday lunches. I started driving an extra 20 minutes each way, so I could park near your block. I don't have any other reason to be in that neighborhood. My heart stopped. Started again. Marcus, I didn't know what to do with it, he said. You're Ryan's brother. You're younger. I kept telling myself it wasn't appropriate. It wasn't. I had a whole architecture of reasons why I should just be your friend and be glad for that and leave it alone. What happened to the architecture? I said, and my voice came out very quiet. He looked at me steadily. You read me a letter from a dead 19-year-old boy about missing ordinary Sundays, he said, and I drove home thinking about you? That was 2 years ago. The architecture wasn't that sturdy. We sat in that restaurant for another hour. We didn't make any declarations. We didn't map out what happened next. We just talked about what we'd been feeling, about how long. It's about the absurdity of two people spending months carefully not saying the thing they both already knew. We laughed at ourselves gently, with the particular laughter of relief. When we finally left, it was nearly 10. The street outside was cool and quiet. It's a kind of autumn night that smells like leaves and something ending and something beginning. We walked to my car. He stood beside me when I unlocked it. Ryan, I said. No, he said. He's your best friend. I know, said it without flinching. I'll talk to him. Marcus, he's my best friend, he said, which means he knows me. And if he knows me, he knows I don't show up somewhere 4 times a week unless it matters. I looked at him in the amber light of the street lamp.